You have finally decided to book that trip to the Greek islands, so here are all the things you need to know before you book your tickets. Flying between Greek islands is not always possible. This is particularly true if you're flying within the same island chain. So, for example, it's really hard to fly from Santorini to Mykonos without going back to Athens first. And most people don't want to do that. You will have to take a ferry. You may be able to fly if you're going to another island chain. So let's say you're going from Santorini to Crete. Those are definitely possible. So it's something you want to factor in when you're booking your hotels because you want to make sure you're allowing yourself enough time between the islands. Which leads me to my second point, is that the ferries between islands do take quite a bit of time, particularly if you're going from far away. So like from Athens to Santorini is a much longer ferry ride. It's like 5 to 8 hours, depending on whether or not you're taking a fast or a slow ferry. Another example is from Santorini to Mykonos. The ferry is anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending on how long, it's not how long, but which ferry you take, the fast or the slow ferry. You're also going to need to allow yourself anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to be at the ferry port before the ferry leaves. This is especially true if you're taking a car onto the ferry. So you have to keep in mind that when you're traveling between the islands, you need to allow either a half a day or a whole day to get there. What about day trips from Athens? A lot of people don't want to get on the ferry for that long, which is totally understandable. You either get seasick or you just don't think it's how you want to spend your time in Greece. So if you're coming to Athens, you can definitely do a day trip from Athens to a Greek island and not just the ones that are visible almost from Athens. There's Aegina, Agistri, Poros, Hydra. There is even a chance that you could go to Kea, which is a Cycladic island. You would just need to take the bus from Athens to the port of Lavrio, and then it's an hour ferry from there. My other advice about booking island trips is to not book your ferry back or even your flight back to Athens or wherever it is you're flying home from on the same day that you're flying home. So for example, let's say your flight home is on a Friday. Do not book your ferry or your flight for Friday morning because there's a small chance that your ferry may get canceled. It either may get canceled due to weather, usually high winds, or sometimes there are strikes. Now, with the strikes, usually they're announced in advance, so you might have some wiggle room and be able to rebook yourself on an earlier ferry or get a flight if there is an airport on your island. Now, keep in mind, everyone else is going to be doing the same thing. So it's a risk you take. So my suggestion is, let's say you're flying back home on Friday. You should book your ferry or your flight on Thursday. So that way, there's no chance, or there's a much smaller chance that if your ferry or your flight is canceled, that you're going to miss your flight home. Because while rebooking a ferry is not so expensive, rebooking your flight home to the US might be, and it's a good reason to have traveler's insurance just in case that happens to you and you have no control and you have to rebook that flight back home. Another thing that I don't think people realize is a lot of Greek islands are super mountainous. Yes, most of them have beautiful beaches, but between beaches are big mountains. And I think a lot of people think, oh, it's an island, it's flat, it's fine, but it's not. There are very few islands that are super flat that don't have some kind of mountain on them. And while most of you are probably thinking, who cares? But it is a big deal if you're renting a car because that means the roads are sometimes not that great. They're very narrow. They have blind curves. Sometimes they are not well maintained because there isn't a large year-round population on the island, so there's gravel on the side of the roads, and it does make it a little bit dangerous. And if you're like me and you're super afraid of heights, it's something you don't want to find out when you get to the island and you're driving along and you're suddenly going up a hill like this, or when you're coming down and all you can see is the sea below you. It's fine. It's usually fine, but my recommendation is to rent a car instead of an ATV or a scooter. They're a little bit safer than being out there, and also you have air conditioning. The cost is usually about the same to rent an ATV as it is a car, particularly if you rent a manual transmission car, because the price is only like maybe €5 a day difference. Another thing that I get asked a lot about is, what do you think about coming to the islands in November or February or March? But what I want to remind you is that Greece does have winter. So it is going to be cold here in the winter. Not necessarily in November, but the water is going to start to get cool, and you're definitely not going to want to go swimming during that time. If you're from a cold water place where it's like the UK or say the Pacific Ocean in California, then maybe the cooler water won't bother you. But if you're someone who wants to come and have really nice warm water, don't come in the winter, because the island's water is not going to be that warm to swim in. Also, a lot of hotels and restaurants close in the winter because they've worked all summer, and the winter is when they take their time off. Another thing is that most likely you cannot drink the water on an island. Most of the island's water is held in reservoirs in the heat of the summer, or it's desalinated water. So while it don't necessarily make you sick, like violently ill, you may have an upset stomach, and it's not something you really want to deal with while you're here on vacation. It isn't like Mexico though. You're not going to get violently ill, as I said, if you say brush your teeth with it or wash fruit off. I even make coffee with it or cook pasta in it, but you don't want to just drink it. The other thing you should know is that when you go to a restaurant, they're likely going to offer you bottled water. You can ask for tap water. However, if they say, no, we don't have it, that's probably because they don't think that you should drink it, and you want to take the islanders' advice is if they're not drinking it, you don't want to drink it. If you want to be a little bit more environmentally friendly, you can bring your own water bottle and fill up either from a large plastic bottle that you buy at the store, or on some islands they have little taps around town that are provided by the government, and those taps are safe to drink from. You may need to ask the locals where that is because it's not super obvious. Those are safe to drink from. I know they are on Eos and they are on Naxos, and I'm sure they're in other places as well. And I have drank from those and been perfectly fine. Another thing, and this is not just on the islands, this is everywhere in Greece, is you cannot flush the toilet paper here. The pipes are too narrow and they can't handle toilet paper being flushed down them. And I know this is a big turnoff for a lot of people, but for people who live here and people who've been coming here for a long time, this isn't a big deal, I promise. In every bathroom, there's either a small can next to the toilet with a lid and a liner, and that gets changed several times a day if you're like in a restaurant. If you're a hotel, the housekeeping staff will come every day and they will take it away. So you're not gonna, it doesn't smell, and the staff are not bothered by it. So I promise you, it's not a big deal. And actually what will be a bigger deal is if you do flush the toilet paper, because eventually your toilet is going to overflow. And that is not gonna be a fun experience for you to deal with on your holiday. Now let's talk about some of the more popular islands here in Greece, which I'm talking about Santorini and Mykonos, because on your first trip to Greece, that's where most people come. And I don't necessarily blame you, but there are things that you should know about before you come, because you may decide that going to a place that's less popular might be for you instead. Because as I like to remind people, there are over 200 inhabited islands in Greece, so there's a lot more to see besides Santorini and Mykonos. They're both going to be very crowded in the summer, particularly if you come in July and August, because not only is that when most people have on for vacation in the US because their kids are out of school, but in August is when most of Europe takes their vacation. Here in Greece, there are 2 weeks, there's also a religious holiday in that 2 weeks where almost everybody is on holiday here. So the islands are jam-packed, and in 2022, the year we're in right now, everything has been booked so far in advance. There are islands I have looked up to see if I could get away in August. There is not a single hotel available on booking.com. You need to plan in advance if you're coming to Santorini and Mykonos. What I mean is you need to book your hotel as soon as you've decided the dates that you're coming, how long you're going to spend in Athens or wherever it is that you're flying in first, and then going to that island. And stick with those dates, because if you decide 2 months from when you've booked that to change, you may not be able to. Because they're the most popular islands, they are the most expensive. Mykonos is by far the most expensive place that you can visit in Greece. And I don't just mean for hotels. Food is more expensive there. Everything is more expensive. So keep that in mind. You need to go and take a look, go look at some restaurants in those places and see if you can afford to go there for 4 or 5 days and eat out every night for your evening meal. Or if you're going to go and party in Mykonos, drinks are like triple the price they would be everywhere else. And they're notorious for this. In Santorini, if you want to stay in the most popular areas, meaning Ia and Thera, then those hotels are going to cost a lot more, particularly if you want to be on the caldera edge and all of that. There are other options in Santorini, both for a great view of the caldera, a great view of the sunset. You need to look at some smaller villages. One place that I recommend is Pyrgos. It used to be the capital of Santorini. Still has amazing views, both of the caldera and of the sunset, and on a clear day from Pyrgos, because it's the highest place, you can see Crete. So you can still go to those places, you just need to plan in advance and have an idea about how much they cost. The other thing is some people say, well, I want to go then in the off season, but after about October, both of these islands are gonna kind of close down a little bit. They don't completely close, obviously, because people do live on these islands year round. But by then, the Greeks who run these hotels and restaurants are tired. They have worked every day in the hot sun, and they now want their vacation. So some places just close for the winter. You know, come the end of October, they close and they don't open again until May. So the hotel that you may have been eyeing or the restaurant you want to go out to eat at is closed because they're now on holiday. So if you want to do those islands in the off season, you need to do a little bit of planning, call the hotel, email the hotel, say, hey, I'm thinking about coming. Are you going to be open? Now, some places will stay open if they know they have enough bookings, but only if you let them know you want to come pretty far in advance, because they're not going to stay open just because 2 weeks before you decide to come, you've booked a hotel room with them. And usually you don't have to worry about that. They mark off the dates. Like, you can't even book it on booking.com or even on their own website. It'll just say call because they're not technically open. Another thing I get asked about occasionally is if they can do a day trip from Athens to Santorini. And while I wouldn't do it, and I don't recommend it, it is technically possible. There is a 7 a.m. flight. I just checked. There is a 7 a.m. flight during the season from Athens to Santorini. And I think the last flight back from Santorini in the season is about 9 o'clock. But you do have to keep in mind, you need to be at the airport about an hour, hour and a half, probably only an hour if you're not checking a bag, obviously, because you're going for the day. So you need to leave your hotel in Athens at like 5 a.m. so that you can get on your 7 a.m. flight. And then you're gonna spend another hour or so once you get to Santorini, getting to Ia or Fira. And then where are you gonna go in the heat of the day? Because Santorini is very, very hot from about noon till 4 o'clock. So you won't really have a place to escape to. You will go eat, obviously, but it's going to be very hot. And then you need to be back at the airport in Santorini by, let's say 7:30, 8 o'clock. It's just a very long day. So while it is possible, I don't recommend it. If you're going to do a day trip, make it an overnight trip instead. You can easily still take a carry-on and go for one night, go there, don't get up at the crack of dawn, and then come back the next day, say in the middle of the afternoon. Then you can come back to Athens, enjoy your dinner here, and go see the Acropolis all lit up at night. If you want more tips about traveling in Greece, there's a video coming up now on the screen that you should definitely go watch. It's all the things that you should know before you travel to Greece. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.